I stood at the window, gazing down at the street 4 stories below, when Shauna, my multitasking secretary, opened my office door. She informed me that Mrs. Valerie Benson wished to speak with me. I instructed Shauna to send Mrs. Benson in and position myself behind my desk. Shauna escorted Mrs. Benson into the room. I extended my hand in greeting, introduced myself, and offered her a seat. Taking my place at the desk, I asked, "What can I do for you, Mrs. Benson?" "I'm hoping you can help me find my husband," she replied. "May I ask how you found out about me?" I inquired. "No one referred me. I saw your sign, Davis Investigations, while leaving my attorney's office and assumed you were a private investigator." I inwardly congratulated myself on choosing an office location near a law firm. It seemed to be paying off with walk-in clients. "Why do you need to find your husband?" I asked. "I need to locate him so I can file for divorce," she explained. "You don't necessarily need to find him for that," I pointed out. "You can file for abandonment after a year." "I can't wait a year. I need to finalize things before September 19th. "What's significant about that date?" "I'm due to receive an inheritance on September 20th. If he's still legally my husband, he could claim half of it. I want him out of my life before then. I've been told the divorce process takes about 6 months, so I have 8 months to find him, serve him, and hopefully finalize everything." "You could consider filing a missing persons report with the police," I suggested. My lawyer advised against it. "Since I kicked him out and made it clear I wanted nothing to do with him, the police won't file a report or search for him." "Perhaps you could provide more details about your situation," I suggested. "I caught him cheating and kicked him out of our house," she recounted. "I changed the locks and warned him I'd shoot him if he tried to enter. The house was mine before our marriage, so legally, he has no claim to it. He could have obtained a court order to retrieve his belongings, but he didn't bother. It's been over 6 months since I last saw or heard from him. My lawyer says if we find him soon and he agrees to the divorce, we could finalize everything before my inheritance comes through. With him completely off the grid, I doubt he'll contest it." I requested from Mrs. Benson a list of her husband's relatives, friends, acquaintances, workplaces, and any other details that could provide a starting point for locating him. She informed me that he had no living relatives but provided what information she could. Additionally, she mentioned, "I don't know the name of the woman he was cheating with, but I did manage to get her license plate number." She gave me the license plate number, and I inquired how she had discovered his infidelity. One day after work, I stopped at the CVC pharmacy on my way home. There's a motel across the street where I saw my husband's truck in the parking lot. After picking up my prescription, I parked where I could observe his truck. About an hour later, he emerged from room 111 with a blonde woman. They kissed, got into their cars, and drove away. As she passed by me, I noted down her license plate number. I knew when I confronted him that evening, he would deny it, so I planned to confront him with her description, the room number, and her plate number. After Mrs. Benson left, I briefed Shauna with all the details and tasked her to gather information on Thomas Benson using her computer skills. I contacted Thomas's employer and learned he was no longer employed there. We don't know what happened. He didn't show up one day, and we haven't heard from him since. Honestly, he wasn't well liked, and no one here is lamenting his absence. I proceeded to contact the individuals on Mrs. Benson's list with similar results. Thomas had disappeared from their lives without anyone taking much notice. It made me wonder how someone so unpopular could manage to find someone with whom to have an affair. I reached out to a former police partner who held a senior position in the department. He informed me they had no substantial records on a Thomas Benson apart from a couple of traffic violations. Meanwhile, Shauna discovered that Thomas had used his credit cards at 3 gas stations south of our location, but beyond that, there were no traces of his whereabouts. After 6 days of fruitless searching, I informed Mrs. Benson that it seemed her husband had headed south, possibly towards Mexico, as the last credit card transactions were in that direction. I expressed reluctance to pursue him further in Mexico due to the lack of financial leads there. It seemed evident to me that Thomas had intentionally disappeared. Mrs. Benson thanked me for my efforts, settled the remainder of my fee, and departed from my office. After 6 days of waiting, I knew exactly where Thomas Benson was even before Mrs. Benson walked into my office. I had been watching the motel where Mrs. Benson had seen her husband with the blonde woman coming out of room 111 at the Red Roof Inn. What Mrs. Benson didn't know was that the blonde woman was my wife, Lorna. Thomas Benson now lay beneath the foundation of a house on 723 Wildflower Lane, taken care of by $10,000 arranged through a friend of a friend of a friend. That same network ensured that any credit card activity would point towards Mexico should the authorities ever investigate Benson's disappearance. As for Lorna's involvement with Benson, she was completely unaware that I knew about their affair, and I intended to keep it that way. If by some unlikely chance the law became involved and learned of her infidelity, I needed to convincingly feign ignorance. However, it seemed improbable as Benson had been missing for 6 months without anyone raising alarms, not even Mrs. Benson until she needed a divorce. There was another reason I hadn't confronted Lorna about her affair with Benson. Lorna came from a wealthy background with a trust fund of over $2.5 million awaiting her when she turned 30, just 7 months away. What's more, she hadn't insisted on a prenuptial agreement when we married, and I had only discovered the extent of her wealth 2 years into our marriage. At the time, I brushed it off, prioritizing our relationship over money with my vows of for richer or poorer. But discovering her infidelity changed everything. Our marriage was over in my eyes, and I could afford to be selective with my vows. Richer or poorer and sickness and health were commitments I took seriously, but for better or worse didn't extend to adultery. It meant divorce. Now, the focus shifted to Lorna's trust fund. I saw it as my compensation for enduring her betrayal. To secure my share, I needed to maintain appearances as a loving husband for the next 7 or 8 months until she inherited the money, possibly a bit longer to ensure the divorce settlement favored me. It wouldn't be difficult. Lorna was a skilled cook, kept a tidy home, and was satisfying in bed. Pretending to love her for a few more months seemed manageable. Of course, I had to ensure she didn't get involved with anyone else during this period who might tempt her away from me. Whether Benson was a passing fling or something more serious, once I found out about him, I decided he had to be dealt with. It did appear that I had been hasty in my judgment of Mr. Benson because Lorna showed no signs of missing him. She continued to engage with me intimately 3 or 4 times a week, a pattern that had persisted even during her affair with Benson. Following the discovery of Benson, I decided to take a proactive approach concerning Lorna. I had no knowledge if Benson was her first indiscretion or merely the latest, and my discovery of their affair had been incidental. I had been on a surveillance job, monitoring room 113 at the Red Roof Inn, when unexpectedly, Lorna and Benson emerged from room 111. Since then, I meticulously monitored Lorna's movements. I could account for her evenings and weekends, leaving only her daytime activities in question. It hadn't escaped my notice that I had caught Lorna and Benson during her lunch break. Upon investigation, I learned that although Lorna and Benson didn't work for the same company, they shared the same building. The building housed a lounge adjacent to it, where Lorna occasionally joined her coworkers for drinks after work, likely where she and Benson first connected. I subscribed to the belief that once a cheater, always a cheater, and I fully expected Lorna to stray again. Since learning about Benson, I had resigned myself to our marriage being over. My primary concern was ensuring her affairs remained flings and didn't escalate into something more serious. In fact, I almost hoped she would cheat again, giving me grounds to file for divorce, but not until after she inherited her trust fund. We resided in a state where no-fault divorce laws applied, so I didn't need proof of her infidelity for the courts, but I desired it for when I confronted Lorna and explained my decision to divorce her. Due to the nature of my work, I had flexibility in my schedule and could position myself to observe Lorna's workplace half an hour before her lunch break. The building conveniently housed a cafeteria in the basement, allowing me to deduce if Lorna left the building within the first 20 minutes of her lunch hour. Even when I was on a case, I could usually break away to monitor Lorna's building. 3 months after discovering her with Benson, she left her workplace at 11:55, drove to the Red Roof Inn, and parked next to a late-model Escalade. A man exited the vehicle, they kissed, and then entered room 109 together. They spent 45 minutes inside before departing separately. I captured photos of their entry and exit, then trailed the Escalade, which unsurprisingly returned to the parking lot of Lorna's workplace building. I took the license plate number and used a contact at the police department to trace the car back to William Dodman, residing at 4880 Apple Tree Place. Driving to the address, I found it to be an impressive house on a spacious lot. Another contact at the city/county building confirmed that the property owners were William and Melissa Dodman. That evening over dinner, I broached a sensitive topic with Lorna, noticing a flicker of concern on her face as I asked, from a woman's perspective, why do you think a woman might cheat on her husband instead of just divorcing him and moving on with the other guy? What's brought this up? She responded. It's a case I'm working on. A client suspected his wife was cheating, and it turns out he was right. Lorna pondered for a moment before answering. There could be various reasons. Maybe she feels betrayed and wants revenge, or perhaps she no longer loves him. Sometimes it's about unmet needs, especially in the bedroom. She may still love him but needs something more from someone else. What did your client do when he found out? I'm not sure yet, but personally, I'd kick her to the curb immediately. The next morning, I tasked Shauna with digging into Melissa Dodman's background. Shauna discovered that Melissa was a real estate broker with the Gary Agency. Reviewing the agency's listings, I called Melissa using the number Shauna provided. I told her I was interested in a property on Nuclear Street, and she agreed to meet me there. The photos Shauna had pulled up didn't do Melissa justice. She was stunning. Unless Melissa was frigid in the bedroom, I couldn't comprehend why her husband would stray. Upon meeting at the property, we introduced ourselves and toured the house. Afterward, Melissa astutely remarked, "You're not really here to view the house, are you? I assume you want to discuss what's going on between your wife and my husband." She chuckled at my surprised expression. "How did you know?" "The private investigator I hired recognized you while you were following your wife, and he informed me." "So, why did you arrange this meeting?" "Since you already know who I am, I'll be straightforward. I wanted to gauge what kind of person you are. Specifically, I wanted to see if you're the type of woman your husband would leave me for. I'm trying to determine if Lorna's affair is just a fling or something more serious. He won't be walking away from me. Crawling is more likely. Billy knows my stance on fidelity well. One and done is my motto. It sounds like you're considering keeping the slut." "No, she's history. But I need at least 5 more months before I serve her with divorce papers. I have things to take care of first. Could you consider letting your husband slide for 5 months? There might be a way, depending on you." "Depending on me? Are you up for some revenge sex? What do you have in mind?" "We can use the pull-out sofa bed in the den. Quick and dirty, and I'll give you at least 3 months. I had never cheated on Lorna, but considering her actions, I felt no obligation to remain faithful. It's not something I typically do, but I need to delay things with Lorna. Still, why me? You're attractive and could have any man in town." "Yes, but they wouldn't be the husband of the woman my husband is sleeping with." "Yes or no?" "Yes. I need all the time I can get." "Okay then, let's go to the den and use the sofa bed." Following her, I helped her set up the sofa bed. She lifted her skirt and removed her panties. As she lay down on the bed, she said, "Your pants need to come off. I don't want my hair caught in your zipper." I kicked off my loafers, dropped my trousers and boxers, and joined her on the sofa bed. She was ready, legs apart. I positioned myself between them and started thrusting. 3 strokes and I was fully inside. Despite her attractiveness, she lay there passively, and it felt mechanical. No wonder her husband strayed. I finished quickly, withdrew, and got off the bed. As I pulled on my pants, she said, "Would you like to know why your wife cheats on you?" As I tightened my belt, I replied, "Tell me." "You hop on, get off, and then get out of bed. Women need more than that. Billy may be a jerk, but he's good in bed." "Hold on there," I interrupted, channeling my inner John Wayne. "You asked for quick and dirty, so that's what I gave you," I explained as I dropped my pants back to the floor. I climbed back onto the bed. She asked, "What are you doing?" I didn't respond. Instead, I moved to go down on her. "Don't do that. It's not clean. I have your stuff inside me." "I'd be fine with that, as long as it's only me, I replied before I began to pleasure her orally. Her objections faded quickly as she gripped my head, urging me not to stop. I continued until she climaxed, then shifted my attention to her breasts before kissing down her body. After a few more licks of her clit, I was aroused again. I positioned myself and slowly entered her, ensuring our connection was intense. I maintained a steady rhythm, bringing her to 2 more orgasms before satisfying my own need. After waiting until I softened, I withdrew. As she sat up, she proposed, "I could hold off on Billy as long as you need if we continue this a couple more times." It became more than a couple, once or twice a week until 2 months after Lorna inherited her trust. During that time, she moved on from Billy and had 2 more lovers before I confronted her. I served her divorce papers at her workplace, where she'd met her lovers. Hoping to disrupt her day, I ensured she was served before lunch. Unsurprisingly, I received a call. "What's with this divorce shit?" she demanded. When a husband finds out his wife is cheating, divorce is often the next step. "Bullshit. I've never cheated on you. We need to talk when I get home." "I won't be there. I've moved out." "How can we sort this out if you're not here?" "There's nothing to discuss, Lorna. You cheated, I know, and it's over. Goodbye." I hung up and instructed Shauna not to patch through any calls from Lorna. That evening, I checked into a motel until I found a new apartment. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. The next morning, Lorna burst into my office, ignoring Shauna's protests. Sitting down opposite me, she demanded, "What's this about divorce and cheating? The deny till you die strategy won't work here. I have evidence you cheated, not just once, but 5 times. Remember when I asked you about wives cheating? That day, I was across from the Red Roof Inn with a camera, ready to catch my client's wife. Instead, I saw you and Thomas Benson coming out of room 111. Her defiance waned as the reality of being caught sank in. After a brief silence, she asked, "That was months ago. Why bring it up now?" "I hoped it was a one-time thing," I lied. "Remember that night? I made my stance clear on cheating. You asked what my client did about his cheating wife, and I said I didn't know, but I'd kick her out like garbage." "But you didn't. So why now?" she pressed. "I love you, Lorna," I admitted. "I hoped it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't, was it? After Benson, I started watching you. Then there was William Dotman, Tim Martin, Mike Newson, and Ray Tillman. Those are just the ones I know about. I realized you're a serial cheater, and I can't live with that. So, I filed for divorce. Please show yourself out." "This isn't over, Brian," she declared. "We'll talk when you get home tonight." With nothing pressing, I returned home and packed a few bags. I intended to stay in the house and let Lorna leave, though I doubted she would. I was prepared to depart if needed. She arrived at 5:45 and found me at the kitchen table, sipping a beer and working on the Times crossword. She sat down across from me and launched into her defense. "We're not getting a divorce," she insisted. "Yes, I messed up, but I love you, and I'm not letting you go. What I've done hasn't hurt us, and it's just your male ego making you file. You still love me." "I do, but I can't live with what you've done. Why don't you pack and leave?" I countered. "I'm not leaving, and you need to call your attorneys to stop the divorce, because I'm not giving you one," she asserted. "You have no choice, Lorna." "Of course I do. I love you, Brian, and I'm not letting you go. If you love me so much, why have you been messing with my life? How do you figure that? Sooner or later, your affairs will catch up with you. You could get a disease and then pass it on to me. Some are treatable, but not all." "That's nonsense, Brian. None of those men would have diseases. Be realistic. All 5 are married. If they're cheating with you, they're likely cheating with others." I walked away from Lorna's protests and headed toward the bedroom. "Where are you going?" "We need to talk about this," she called after me. "I've said my piece, Lorna. Now I need to pack." If you won't leave, then I will, I replied, ignoring her pleas. I had anticipated her refusal to leave, so I had already packed and booked a room at the Marriott. As I made my way to the front door with my bags, Lorna continued to shout, "Brian, damn it. Come back here and talk to me." Once settled at the Marriott, I phoned Melissa to inform her that I had served Lorna and she could proceed with Billy. "How did she take it?" Melissa asked. "Not well. She's going to fight it, but she can't stop it," I explained, recounting our exchange. Melissa shared that she had similar suspicions about Billy and had already been tested herself. "I'm clean, and I haven't been with Billy since I got tested." "Where are you now?" she inquired. "At the Marriott," I replied, giving her my room number. She said she could be there in 20 minutes. "What about Billy?" I asked. "Forget him. He's history. I've seen a lawyer, and the papers are ready. I'll call her tomorrow morning to proceed with serving him." "See you in 20, she confirmed, though it took her 35 minutes to arrive. It was an exhausting night, but we woke up together in the morning for the first time. Before leaving, she promised to call me soon to arrange another meeting. Over the next 2 days, I secured an apartment and settled in. On the same day I moved, my attorney called to inform me that Lorna had hired a lawyer and was contesting the divorce. I wasn't surprised and remained resolute. She could delay, but she couldn't prevent it. Her first challenge was the division of assets. She insisted her trust fund be excluded. My attorney argued that under no-fault laws, all assets acquired during the marriage were subject to a 50-50 split. However, the judge exempted her trust fund from this division, which frustrated me, but I had no recourse. Next, she demanded counseling, which I adamantly refused. The judge ultimately ordered 10 sessions of counseling. Despite my objections, I complied with the court's decision. In the end, the judge ruled that I didn't have to pay alimony because Lorna's financial position, including her job and trust fund, put her significantly ahead of me. While I was disappointed about the exempted trust fund, I accepted the outcome and moved forward with finalizing the divorce. After the first joint counseling session, Lorna expressed regret for her mistakes and professed her love, believing we could work things out. My response was clear and uncompromising. She had cheated multiple times, and I wanted nothing more to do with her. Subsequent sessions turned into individual ones with the counselor. Lorna went first, and when it was my turn, I immediately informed the counselor that I refused to engage in any discussion involving Lorna. Throughout the next 3 joint sessions, I remained steadfast with my arms folded, repeating, "I will have nothing to do with Lorna." Lorna's responses were predictably consistent as well: apologies, declarations of love, and pleas for another chance to prove herself. It wasn't until after the 7th joint session that things took a turn. Exiting the meeting, Lorna approached me in the parking lot as I was getting into my truck. "I know you were upset about the judge's ruling on my trust. What if I give you 2/3 of it and sign a postnuptial agreement forfeiting the last third if I ever cheat again? Would you drop the divorce and come home? Are you serious?" I replied incredulously. "Yes, I am. I want to show you how much I love you and want you back in my life," she insisted. I didn't hesitate. Doing a quick mental calculation, I estimated 2/3 of her trust to be around $1.7 million. "If you can legally guarantee that to me, I will drop the divorce," I replied. "And come home to me," she clarified. "Yes, I will come home," I affirmed. "You going to follow me home?" she asked. "No, I have plans for the evening and need to handle practical matters like informing my landlord and ensuring your promise holds true. Trust is not something I have in abundance right now," I explained. "You don't trust me?" she questioned. "I trusted you when we took our vows. How did that turn out? Forsaking all others?" I retorted. "It might take a couple of days," she acknowledged. "After this long, a few more days won't make a difference," I conceded. I called Melissa and updated her on the situation, mentioning I had a few days left before I had to resume being a loving husband. I asked if she'd like to spend some of that time with me. She agreed, and we spent those days together, which were quite intense. It took Lorna 4 days to sort everything out, during which Melissa stayed with me. We talked, and Melissa mentioned William was contesting the divorce, and she might have to delay due to financial constraints. I assured her not to worry. I've recently come into some money, and I'll give you what you need to make the divorce happen, I told her. Trying to buy your way into my pants? Melissa joked. Actually, I'm buying my way out of yours. Once I return home to Lorna, I'll be back in loving husband mode, I replied. For how long? She asked pointedly. You know what they say, once a cheater, always a cheater. Until she cheats again, I said firmly. When it happens, if I'm not in a relationship, give me a call, she replied. I moved back home, and Lorna's welcome nearly overwhelmed me. It's been 3 years now, and I've kept a close watch on her. She hasn't strayed. I never did ask Lorna why she cheated on me in the first place. Was I curious? Absolutely. But did I want to risk damaging my ego or burdening myself with lingering doubts? No way. Knowing that she loves me enough to give me almost $2 million just to keep me with her is enough for me. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Write your opinion in the comments. Remember, you're writing a story too, and it's up to you whether it's a good one or not.